Welcome to the Toilet Paper Diaries. Well, actually, it's not Toilet Paper Diaries. This is the secret show that everyone's been asking for, but they just didn't mention to us. We've compiled all the very best bits that were secret and put together the best of the secret Toilet Paper Diaries just for you right now.
Hi, Dave. Great to see you. It is now episode 85. Isn't that exciting? And the world is still there. And right now, apparently things are now in full swing with a new president and a new vice president. So let's see how things are going to play out. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm still going to stick by what I said. As soon as the election was over and as soon as I saw that Trump was out, I don't want to talk about politics anymore. I've had it for 4 years. I've stopped looking on the news to find out what's happened next. I've been looking forward to just hearing that everything's okay. Did you hear what happened the other day? No. Well, don't worry. We're in safe hands. That's all I want to hear. So I'm more than happy to just peek in and go every now and again. Yeah, nobody's been shot. Nothing's been invaded. Nobody's been strung up. And you never guess who's been grabbing people, but nobody's been grabbing anything of anybody, least of all me. So I'm happy with that. It sounds boring, but boring can be nice.
Yeah, I'm very happy with boring. So that's why we are preparing for you today the first part of the best of the secret toilet paper diary. So as you possibly have heard, and if you have been watching the previous episodes, we got some really good feedback, haven't we, Dave, from the previous episodes?
Yeah, because the thing is, the episodes that you're going to see now are ones that we did behind secret doors when people were asking us, can you cover this and can you cover that? And we didn't put it into our normal show. We did it into a separate show called Fast Forward with only a handful of invited guests. It was more like a mastermind session. And now we can release these things to share with you. And I think you'll find that they're a bit more businessy than we normally talk about, but you want to make sure you got your notepad and pen because it's full of gems and nuggets that you really want to turn into your business and you really want to use for insights to be able to become more profitable. So this is for you.
Would you like to know how to bypass all this craziness and live in a state of understanding instead of actually in a state of fear? Keep watching because this is going to be very interesting for you. I have been studying for a number of years the subject of consciousness, the subject of awareness. And there's many theories about it. And one of the things that I always notice is that anybody that talks about awareness or talks about understanding or talks about consciousness, they always do it in levels. So the question is, what level of awareness do you have? What level of consciousness do you have? This is a great question, and let me just get started so that you can see my own creation of how I see consciousness works. But in order to do that, you will need to know how these different levels for different people are about. So this is Mike Cheng, which is a very famous fitness guru in the internet, and this is his take on it. Look at how he actually talks about consciousness in levels. Have a look.
Did you know that the level of consciousness that you operate at determines every single thing in your life? It determines how you look at the world, how you look at other people, how you look at yourself. It determines whether or not you're happy. It determines whether or not you're scared. It determines whether or not you have courage. It determines everything. It determines whether or not you find solutions, or whether or not you're creative, or whether or not you're hitting walls all the time. And there are particularly 4 stages of consciousness. And it's if you are dealing with a lot of problems, if you are feeling like the world is just knocking you down, and you're just getting it handed to you, okay? It's not your fault. It's your level of consciousness. It's not you, okay? It's like a relationship. Oh no, it's not you, it's me. No, well, it's not you per se. it's your level of consciousness. And I say that because when you change your level of consciousness, suddenly those things aren't happening anymore. Okay, that's why I say it's not you, but you have to change it. Okay, other people can't change it. You have to change it. So, level one, stage one of consciousness. So the first two stages are basically the lower stages. They are fear-based. They are fear-based ways of living, fear-based levels of consciousness. So the first one is where life is happening to me. These type of people, when this happens, and I say these type of people, but when this happens, we feel like we are being a victim to people, victims to situations, and we feel powerless. Man, these things are happening to me and I can't change it, and it's so frustrating. Oh my God, I need help. I need you to help me out. I can't seem to fix this problem on my own. I just don't know what to do. I feel so helpless. So this state of consciousness is a very low vibrational state. And when we're in that state, it doesn't matter what we have. It doesn't matter if we get a resource or we get someone to help us out or we get a new job or something changes. If we stay in that level of consciousness, we are always looking at ourselves, other people, and the events around us with that level of perception, with that lens, you know? And it won't change. We will still have that same way of looking at it, even though outside things seem to be changing. And that's because the inside, the level of consciousness, is where it's at, okay? What we need to do is we need to increase the level of consciousness, increase the vibrational frequency in our body. So this way we can rise up in a level.
So this is, I think, something very interesting. First time that we're seeing something about consciousness. I mean, as I was saying, I have been studying consciousness and awareness for a while, and everybody that talks about this talks about levels. And he also talks about levels of vibration. I mean, the different frequencies in which everybody is. And if you start understanding everything in frequencies and in vibrations, you will start seeing, well, you know, if somebody is in tremendous pain and is, you know, complaining about all the masks and the vaccinations and whatever, and that doesn't resonate with you, that happens because, of course, they're in a complete different level of awareness that you are.
Resonate is a term of sound. And the idea is, when you study quantum physics, that we're not actually physical beings, we're actually physical sound. And so we're sound waves. And so the reason you get on certain people and you say, yeah, but I'm on the same wavelength as me, is because that consciousness, that wavelength allows us to be the same. That as a speaker, your ability to manipulate and work with an audience is working with sound. You get the Wi-Fi code of the room, you raise them up, you put them down, you can actually physically feel when they're feeling low, and you can feel it like an avalanche or tsunami when they're really on a mega high, you feel it in the back of your neck. So this is not just a throwaway term. It's not just a hippie way of looking at it. It really is something that you can actually take charge of. And the best people, the best practitioners, I mean, when you hear an opera singer, if you like opera, or you hear your favorite artist singing, when they reach that certain note, it changes to an incredible experience that you get because that sound has such a powerful way of reaching you.
Yeah, and you can always see who's going to be a good speaker and who's not going to be a good speaker because, of course, they understand how to navigate in those frequencies and how they can actually expand their awareness. I mean, I could get on a stage and I could see, I can sense, I can definitely understand the vibration of the people. And whenever they ask me a question, whenever they tell me something, I simply know at what level of awareness they are. Now, does that make me think that I am more intelligent? No, I am more aware. And that is the whole point. Here's another video of a friend of ours. We have been there in Dubai with him. Dave, you have interviewed him a couple of times. Vishen Lakhiani. And this is his take. Once again, talking about consciousness. Have a look.
95% of humanity is right now, level 1. Now, there are a couple of unique things about level 1. Level 1 is all made up. We made up, our forefathers made it up, and they trained us to take on these constructs. If you ardently believe in your religion, you're at level 1. If you believe in 9 to 5, you believe in corporations, you believe in mindfulness, you're level 1. There's no good or bad or judgment in level 1. The important thing is we are living in a world of mental constructs. But there are a couple of problems in level 1. You see, in level 1, we tend to be at what some people call the victim stage. We live in this world of constructs, but we have forgotten that we can mend, we can fix, we can mold this world. And so rather than go out there and try to change this world, we react like a victim. He said that and it hurt me. My government is keeping me down. The world is like this. And most people live like that. They feel helpless in the face of this giant 7 billion human being planet that we live on, with so much happening all the time. But at a certain point, you start waking up. And when you start waking up, that's when you start getting to level 2. I call level 2 the state of the culture hacker. Because here's what happens at level 2. At level 2, you start questioning culture. Now, what is culture? Culture is nothing more than all our human beliefs and all our human rituals and practices coming together. But culture isn't just religion. Culture is our ideas of getting a college degree to be successful. It's ideas of joining a corporation, of being an entrepreneur. All of these are cognitive concepts which come from culture. But the thing is, when you get to level 2, you start developing an idea that culture is an absolute truth. And you can hack it. You can bend it. You can mold it to your own desires. In the words of Steve Jobs, you realize that everything in the world around you was made up by people no smarter than you. And you can change things. And when you get this, said Steve Jobs, you will never be the same again. I love that quote. But that's what's happening at the level of culture hacker. Now at culture hacker, something interesting begins. The world of questioning. We start questioning. Most people don't question because, when a kid grows up and they start asking their parents, why? Most parents will simply say, because I told you so. But, so we tend to kill that ability to question at an early age. But most of you are here because you question. If you're watching this as a video on YouTube, you're curious, you're beginning to question. Congratulations, you are already, most likely, at level 2. So level 2 is the level of questioning. But something else happens at level 2. At level 2, not only are you questioning culture, but you begin to see that the world around you is bendable. You don't like the 9 to 5? Great. You become an entrepreneur. Or you start a company with flexi time. You don't like the idea of marriage? Great. You come up with your own ideas of how a man and a woman should relate. You don't like the idea of college degree? No problem. You drop out and start your own thing. You begin to question the conventions of culture. And this is where an important insight enters your head. Life can happen to you or life can happen from you. When you grasp the idea that life is within your control, that you have the ability to bend reality, you're at level 2. Beliefs are hackable. Beliefs are swappable. Now remember, culture is nothing more than beliefs plus rituals. So when you learn that beliefs are not you, beliefs, in fact, possess you, but those beliefs can be plucked out and replaced with more empowering beliefs, you have started to understand this phrase, that life can happen to you or life can happen from you.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to see things. I mean, he once again talks about levels. So as you can see, people which are enlightened, and for that, please do not understand intelligence, because I don't want people to think that I am saying, well, I am more intelligent than you, or that Dave is more intelligent than you. This has nothing to do with intelligence. There's incredibly intelligent people which are not enlightened. They are not aware of many things. And this is one of the things why it's so critical that you understand that this frequency in which we vibrate is different for every single person. And that's why it's very important that you understand that everything is done in different levels of awareness. Vishen talks about 3 levels. Mike Cheng talks about 4 levels. It depends on who you're following. For me, the theory that resonates the most has 7 levels of awareness, even though it is not the same as this one. I want to explain to you the one that I have crafted for myself, for my own understanding. This is not something that I have done for someone else, but basically my own understanding. This one has also 7 levels. And in my own theory of understanding and of awareness, there's also 7 levels, also with a pyramid pretty similar to this one. And in my way of understanding, and for me to help myself, once again, this is about helping myself and then also helping other people. This is exactly how I see it. So I recommend you to do 2 things. If you're thinking that this information is powerful, Please give us your comments, and also think of who else can benefit from this, because a lot of people need to hear this message. And I think it's important that you start, that you share it with them, do that favor to them. So take a note of this, because I think you're going to find this information absolutely critical. So I will explain to you each one of these phases, and Dave is going to help me basically make it more clear so that we can get the most benefit out of it. So in my way of thinking, my theory of the levels, first of all, you have the level of pre-conscious. This happens the moment that you get the sperm gets together with the egg, and suddenly the life gets created. You're pre-conscious. Right now, imagine that you're a computer. Your brain is going to start getting all the information from the DNA of your parents. Is going to start getting all this information to start filling up that hard drive, which is your brain. Every single one of us goes through that period. I mean, if you think about it, we even know that if they play classical music while you're in your mother's womb, you will be able to actually benefit from it. So that's level one. Each and every single one of us actually goes through that stage.
So if you're saying level one, pre-conscious, that doesn't make sense to me. Have you ever had a dream of floating? Have you ever had a dream where you're wearing something, but you're naked below the waist? That is a floating dream. That's part of your consciousness of being in the womb. What happens is if you had a dream where you're floating, not quite flying, and you're moving around at some kind of walking speed above people, that is a memory that was implanted to the experience of the 9 months that you spent in the womb. So it did make an impact on you. And certainly for my beautiful daughter, Maya, I used to talk to her every night when my wife was pregnant. I used to tap on the stomach and have a chat with her. And strangely enough, when she was born, she popped out, as happens, and I mentioned her name, and she looked straight for me because she'd heard me talk to her for 9 months beforehand. That wasn't by accident. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, so everybody goes into that level. I mean, and this is why it's so important that you understand this. Now, the second level of awareness, the second level of consciousness, it's called the identity programming. Now, you're going to see that there's the first level and the second level. The first level, it's not going to end up just by you being in the womb. Actually, you are born and you have absolutely no memory of what happened to you during the first 3 to 4 years of your life. I mean, you don't remember much about that because you were still in the pre-conscious level. In this pre-conscious level, I mean, you really do not really have too many memories. Now you go into level 2, basically the identity programming, the moment that you have your first memory. Think about it. When was your first memory? When, at what age did you have your first memory? And you're going to see that possibly was 3 or 4. My first memory, I think I was 4 years old, and I fell down of one of my parents used to live in a very steep street in Mexico City, and I fell down from one of a tricycle, and I really hit my head, and I was very, very scared. That for me was the first memory. Think about when was your first memory? And that's going to actually mark the moment that you went from level 1 of consciousness to level 2. Now, when you got to level 2, you started living on a level of consciousness where you were not living really your life yourself through your eyes, but you were living your eyes through the eyes of your parents' island, and you were raised by Thai people. You will have seen the world from the point of view of how Thai people will see it. If you would have been born in Japan, as we are seeing those kids there on the screen, you will also be raised in a very different way than if you will be brought up in Mexico or in the UK or in the Netherlands. And every single thing that we do happens through that through that perception of your parents. That's exactly when your identity is being programmed. So you can actually take away a Chinese boy and raise it in the United States, and that kid is not going to have the same identity programming, even though his DNA could be from that country. He's going to have the DNA from the parents. And that goes all the way till you're about 11 years old, 12 years old. You are going to see the world in the exact same way as your parents see the world. If your parents are Republican, you're going to think, you know, up with Donald Trump. If your parents are Democrat, you're going to say, oh my goodness, I hate Donald Trump. Not because you really think that way, but because, of course, that's the programming that your parents are providing.
Well, what we got as a theory when we work with NLP and hypnosis is that the cutoff date is actually when you're about the age of 7. Up until 7, you have no ability to be in anything that's really conscious. You're in your subconscious, in a dream world all the time. Somebody tells you something, you take it in, it must be true. The parents are gods, everything that they say to you, believe in fairies, everything, it's all there. Until you get to about the age of 7, then a lid gets put on everything that you believed up until then. And then after that, the parents talking to you is helping to shape the version of what you had. And you start to realize that parents aren't gods, they're actually just older than we are. And they know a lot more than us, but sometimes they're actually starting to get it wrong. And you start to have your own opinion on how things go. And it's really interesting to see how that affects them, because there's actually experiments done, one about a guy who decided to take on a chimp and his baby at the same time, and he allowed them to grow together as friends, and they both learned together. The chimp is learning a lot faster than his own kid, and the only reason he split them apart, because they were inseparable, they both thought they were the same creature, is when his own son decided that he was having, well, he didn't decide, he was having difficulty speaking, because every other test that they did, the chimp was faster at doing it until the ability to speak came. And the little boy didn't work out how to speak until they separated them from each other, and then the boy learned. So we don't even know what species we are until we're actually taught by everybody else.
Yeah, funny enough that those beliefs about racism and those, they are not instated in the kid just because of that. It is because they are absorbing the identity programming of the parents. By now, you should understand, okay, I have gone through that level of that level of awareness. Then I went to my second level of awareness. Now what happens? We go to the third level of awareness, and that starts happening when you become a teenager. That's the level of belonging. You want to belong to a group. You want to belong to a pack. Now you start already outgrowing your parents, because of course you start feeling awkward if your parents hold your hand, or you start feeling awkward if your parents, talk to you while you're with your friends, and you start feeling awkward. You start actually growing to that level, because now you want to belong to another group, to another social group. For the first time, you want to belong to a group. This is exactly the time when kids, in the past it was smoking, right now it's vaping. I mean, right now the biggest vaping population are basically teenagers, because it's the cool thing to do. Also, you feel very comfortable, and you start wearing the same hairstyles. I mean, if you look at that picture here, we can see, I mean, the kids could be very different, but they're having the same hairstyle. They start using the same clothes. They start using possibly earrings, or they will get a tattoo, or they will start doing all sorts of things, because of course they want to belong to a pack. Now, this is a very important thing, because of course, for the first time in our lives, we feel that we are connected to people outside our household. So this is also another important level of development. Now, this is important, but the problem is this is where most people get stuck. Because of course, by feeling comfortable with a group of people, we start really stagnating in growth, because of course, we don't want to feel uncomfortable. And the moment that we feel settled on this level of development, a lot of the consciousness starts actually getting away from our life.
The theory is that when you get lobsters and you put them into a pot, when you start to boil the pot and a lobster tries to get out, the other lobsters pull it back in because they want to keep the whole thing together. Even if they're all going to die, that's what happens. I've never been a lobster, I've never cooked a lobster. So, but that's a theory that's to support this whole idea of being in together. And it makes sense for it to be built into us from a very young age, because it's not actually about the genetic to help us survive. So we stay in the same pack with the same people and have those loyalties to our own tribe.
Exactly. So now what happens? I mean, you start growing up in age. And then the next thing that comes to your mind is that you need to start questioning. Because of course, I mean, you're not going to take everything for face value. So you start moving into level 4, which is questioning, which is exactly what Vishen was talking all about. So they tell you something and then you don't take it for face value. You say, yeah, right. Of course, and that's exactly what's going to be happening. Now, just think about how it was. I mean, when you were about 16 or 17 years old, I can guarantee you that you had a very good friend and possibly you decided to go into some sort of remote location. You took a bottle of wine and you started talking about everything that was wrong with the world. And you, between the two of you, you were going to fix the world. Did it ever happen to you? I can guarantee you it happened to you, because that's what happened. That's just the normal evolution. You, of course, now feeling very comfortable. And then you, of course, have these conversations with your best friend or your girlfriend or whoever it was. And then you started saying, well, I really feel empowered and I'm going to start doing something. And I'm going to start moving into the next level of development or into the next level of awareness. Now, what is the problem? That the moment that you start taking action of your questioning, suddenly the rest of the people which are on level 3, which were the people that were not making you feel that were making you feel comfortable, suddenly they start saying, oh, you changed, you're not the same. And then they don't accept you. And then guess what happens? Instead of actually going up, you're going to go down now. Why? Because, of course, you want to still feel that love and that care from that group. Does that make sense?
Completely. When you're saying about the best friend at the age of 16 and wanting to do something different, we're both DJs. My friend John Wiggum and I were going up to the big school, going up to the sixth form, and we both had an interest in music. We wanted to take it to a new level and DJ clubs and bars and create new music ourselves. And we just absorbed ourselves in that world. And that is actually what made me become a radio DJ and ultimately become a hypnotist, stage hypnotist, and a speaker. So that was planted at a very early stage.
Exactly. So now what happens is you start questioning. And because of that questioning, you start moving into another level of awareness, which is going to create more questions. If you're strong enough, you will be able to become independent and self-thinking. And that's exactly what Vishen was talking about, the culture hacking. You're going to be able to become an entrepreneur. You're going to be able to start thinking for yourself. However, that's also going to have a lot of questions. And the reason why I would like to illustrate this level number 5 with a seagull, it's because it reminds me of the book Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, which is a book that I definitely recommend you to read. I mean, it was one of the books that I read when I must have been 12 or 13 years old. And it made a big impact in my mind because, of course, I knew that I didn't want to belong to the flock that was eating garbage just close to the to the beach. I mean, I wanted to soar. I wanted to go high. Possibly, I mean, that metaphor that everybody talks about, the eagles, eagles are a different kind of species. But I think being a seagull, it actually makes a lot more sense because, seagulls can also break and can fly very high the moment that they understand that consciousness level needs to go higher. So it's an incredible book where people start saying, moving forward into the level of development of, I'm going to be independent. I'm going to start thinking independently. I'm going to start doing the things that I like. If I don't like this, I'm going to do it in a different way. And you start leaving behind your family. You start leaving behind your previous friends. You start leaving behind a number of different friends. Now, remember, until you actually decide to be like Jonathan Livingston Seagull and soar on your own, you're still going to be questioning. There's people that live for their entire lives in level 3, which of course they feel very comfortable. There's people that live all their lives in level 4, which is questioning. And then the people that stop questioning and they move to level 5, which of course also requires questioning, but it's going to help you become your own person. That is a big, big difference. Now, what is happening, and this is also very important for you to understand, is many people that were in level 3 have been forced because of the pandemic to start questioning. And because of this questioning, they are suffering. It's not bad that you question. It's not bad that you say, well, could it be plausible that the pandemic is a hoax? Could it be plausible that this was planned by the governments for total world domination? Those are great questions, but they create uncertainty. And unless you have that capacity to overcome that and to say they're not going to be controlling me, regardless if it was Bill Gates, or if it was Elon Musk, or it was the World Health Organization, they're not going to control me because I control the way I think. Guess what's going to happen? You are going to be in pain. So every time that I see people which are suffering right now because of the pandemic, I know that they are at this level of awareness.
It's so true. And one of the things that we've talked about all the way through the Toilet Paper Diaries, and in fact through our careers and coaching people, is about asking better questions. If your brain is a supercomputer, and it will find for you the answers, but it's all based on the coding of what you really want. So by asking better questions, you get better answers. If you don't ask enough questions, you get lousy answers, and you end up just feeling like everybody else. And you end up getting your answers from people who have no more of a clue than you did for asking the question in the first place.
The actual definition of thinking is simply the process. If you actually look at it on the dictionary, thinking is simply the process of asking questions. The better the questions, the better the answers. And those are things which are very important for you to understand. Now, if you ask questions which are only going to create uncertainty, that is going to take you to level 3, not to level 5. And that's the important thing. Well, can I change this situation? For example, I see a lot of posts in social media saying, you know what, it's absolutely true. We're going to start with the masks, and then afterwards they're going to get in the vaccinations, and then we're going to be chipped and we're going to be controlled. Well, you know, that's an affirmation. That's not a question. If this happens, for example, that's a better way to see it. If they're going to be chipping us and we're going to be controlled, as exactly as Viktor Frankl was saying, the only thing that they cannot take away from me is what am I going to be doing? And then that's when your level of consciousness starts going high. Now, if we move to level 6.
They've already chipped us. Everyone's walking around with a phone. The chip has already been planted. So don't be under some disillusion about it has to be physically in you. Who puts the phone down doesn't take it with them? The chip's there.
For if we actually think about it, we are already enslaved. But the only thing that they cannot take away from you is your way on how you react to actually things. So moving from level 5 to level 6. Level 6 is about finding meaning. And this is really important. The moment that you find meaning towards whatever you are going to be doing, then life starts changing completely. Life has no meaning. Each of us has meaning and we bring it to life. It is a waste to be asking the question when you are actually the answer. And this is written by Joseph Campbell, the author that created The Hero's Journey. So once again, life has no meaning. Each of us has meaning and we bring it to life. It is a waste to be asking that question when we know that we are the answer. Dave, right now, I understand perfectly that my meaning is not to become a gazillionaire. My meaning is not about to become incredibly famous. My meaning in life is to make a change and difference, first of all, to my kids, to my wife, to my family, and also to make sure that I help in every single way that I can the people that I have within my own reach. I live happy to myself. I go to sleep, I sleep well. I am not worried about what's going to happen because I know that I am pretty much enough. And one of the things that I think is very interesting, if you think about it, birds are not worried to stand in any branch of a tree. I mean, they're not afraid of if another branch is going to fall on top of them because they know that they can fly. So this is exactly where I am. My meaning is I know that I can fly by myself. I don't need to be put down or to be restricted by anybody. I know very well that I can actually create that meaning to my life. And this is why I live happy. If they put me in lockdown or if they put me whatever it is, whatever shit they throw at me, I will be able to cope with.
I can't disagree with that. That's absolutely right. For me, it's the same thing. Family drives me. But here's an interesting thing that's happened to me with meaning. When the Black Lives Matter came out, I had to really search myself to find out what this meant to me. And when it actually dawned on me that it was really important for me to take some kind of stand, because it really had meant something to me, and I'd sort of like held it all back, then suddenly it became very easy to post about it, to talk about it, and take abuse for it, because it suddenly meant that I had a meaning to that, which I hadn't ever taken before in terms of a political stance or some kind of idealistic thing. I mean, okay, I do my job and I work around the world and I help people, I look after my family, but this was interesting when the meaning kicked in, but it's got to be tailor-made to something that I know works for you. I mean, we've got a number of people who are watching this show. One of my favorites is a friend, Catherine Ganilka, who we know very well, who is really into the green issues of the world. Everything is colored by that, colored green, and she's really driven by it, and it's fantastic. And it was a big challenge for her to leave a job and start going down that direction. But once you start doing it, there's no other way of dealing with it. The whole world is shaped in that direction. I know that's true for Titsi as well, has been on the show, and many of other people who feel the same way about their profession. If you get the two to mix together, fantastic.
Yeah, that is the last piece of the puzzle. Finding meaning. The moment that you find meaning, what happens is that you start navigating into the last level of enlightenment or awareness or consciousness, which is basically self-service and compassion. And I believe that the Toilet Paper Diaries, I believe that the Fast Forward, it's exactly our expression of us moving into the seventh level, because what we are doing, we are not getting paid to do this. We spend a lot of time and we are providing selfless service and compassion to many of you, because of course we understand the hardship in which we are living. So this for us, it's a project of love. This for us is a project of compassion. This for us is a project of growth into ourselves, which I know is going to be beneficial also for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely, some great comments there. And Tizzy was saying about being the captain of your own ship instead of sailing along other people's ships. And the global gal, our friend Brenda McGuire, was saying, make sure you follow your own GPS when you do that and not anybody else's. And here's where we're talking about this whole show and what we've been talking about all week. The challenge is when you are following somebody else's GPS, it's not yours. And when it ends up taking you to a place that you don't feel comfortable, you feel completely lost. That's why if you do it right, even if you're following somebody's GPS, but you buy into it, you feel that it's your choice and your journey. But why do that at all? Why not just make it the one that you really want? So whether it goes good, it goes bad, it stops tomorrow, or it continues to your 120, you know that you drove the whole thing from the very beginning.
We have to think of consciousness, of awareness as a continuum. You're going to have a range of experiences and you need to be aware and alert. You need to be aware that you are possibly in a level of consciousness which is not helping you. You have to understand your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions. Sometimes there's going to be control processes. Sometimes there's going to be things which are in automatic pilot or automatic processes. Sometimes you're going to cut yourself daydreaming that things will be better. You can make them better. You're going to be altering states. You're going to be having different sleep patterns. And those are the things which are very important. You have to completely be aware of what is going on in your life, because that is going to be the best thing that you can actually do for yourself. Don't feel that what is happening is that bad.
I get a chance to concentrate on the stuff I really want to do and not put up with other people's BS and do their stuff. And the reason I do like it is because I've already reached a certain level where I've got more time to devote to the things that I really want to do and less time being driven by everybody else's world.
What I don't like is, well, you know, I cannot travel and I cannot do things that I really, really enjoy. But I mean, in the other hand, I am finding the positive out of all these things. I am not worried if they're going to give me a vaccination and I'm going to be chipped. I mean, I'm not going to be fighting if I'm going to be wearing a mask or not, because of course that is just irrelevant. But you can see, I mean, when you see people which are just getting so much caught into that, all you need to do is think, you know what? My awareness is a lot higher than their awareness. And instead of bashing them, ask them questions so that they will become more aware of how the circumstances are working.
Now, here's a really fascinating look at what happens to good people when you put them into a situation where some of them you say you are empowered to do whatever you want, and some of them you say you have to put up with whatever you are told to do. So this experiment was a real thing that happened in the 70s. They got 20 people, I think it's 20 people, 10 of them, they said, right, you are going to be prisoners, and the other 10 said, you are going to be the prison warders. And they were all students. I think they were paid a fee for being there or something. And they literally dressed up the warders and dressed up the prisoners and said, right, here's what we need to do. And so they were told you're not physically allowed to abuse the prisoners, but you can enforce certain rules. And they watched the whole thing unfold. Now, I don't know how you would react in that situation, but you'd be very surprised by what happened in this movie. In this reality, there's a movie which illustrates exactly what we're talking about. And I think the thing to do is show you that, and then we'll tell you what happened afterwards. So you got the scenario, and I want you to think, which one would you be? And if you were, how much would you put up with from the other people before you took a stand? Let's have a look at this.
Would you rather be a guard or a prisoner?
I don't think I have the qualities to be a guard.
Prisoner. Prisoner, I guess.
Prisoner. Sounds like it would be a little less work.
Prisoner.
Why's that?
Nobody likes guards.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This experiment will be an extension of my research into the effects prisons can have on human behavior. You're going to be pleased to know that you all have been chosen to be the prison guards. But under no circumstances whatsoever are you to physically assault the prisoners in any way. So remember, just as you were watching the prisoners, my graduate staff and I will be watching you.
All right, gentlemen, we're gonna have ourselves a lot of fun.
Rule number 1, prisoners must remain silent.
This is an exercise period.
Okay, is it just me, or are these guys taking this thing a bit too seriously? Why don't you give me 20 push-ups?
Look at this guy. Thinks he's John Wayne or something.
You address me as Mr. Correctional Officer.
This might be an interesting 2 weeks after all.
Why don't you make up your bunk, 8612?
I did, Mr. Correctional Officer.
Well, that's not what I see.
Hey, what are you doing? It's just me now!
What was that?
You just hit him. You're not supposed to hit him.
Should we step in?
No. Let the guards figure it out. Let's see where it goes. Good evening, gentlemen. How about we make this one a night to remember?
This is all real. They won't let you go. They won't let us leave.
Those are not prisoners. Those are not subjects. Those are boys, and you are harming them.
Please! Let me out of here! I want out! I want out now! You thought you were gonna get some playtime in the yard, boy? Is that what you thought this was gonna be?
Holy moly! Is that movie in? I have not seen it. Is that movie in Netflix?
I don't know. I've not checked it on Netflix, but you should be able to find it somewhere. But it's a genuine thing. It's probably on YouTube or something. But it's a real story. If you check out the reality of it, there's actually got footage of what was really happening and the violence that these guys were inflicting on each other just to see. Now, this was actually part of an experiment, or similar to an experiment that was done ages ago. That was a bit like Lord of the Flies. It's called the something cave experiment. Berman cave experiment. And we got two sets of kids, all 11, 12-year-olds, put them onto different parts of an island in the forest, and they basically told them that they didn't like each other. So they played some games, sports games, and whoever won got some really good stuff, whoever lost got nothing. And then they started twisting the knife a little bit by making sure that they ran out of food and to see what would happen with each other. And fights broke out. And what they did was then they started making less water. And fights broke out. But then the kids started working together when they were told that they could do it. And they bonded and became much closer as a direct result. But the rules that they had initially would have ended up with somebody probably being killed because of how it had been set out. So think about your choices. Think about the world you're in. Think about the things that are happening around you. And think about whether that helicopter view is where you want to stay when this stuff is going on. Would you make a stand? Would you land and take a hit for somebody who's got injustice being done to them?
Yeah, it's insane, unbelievable. You know what? This makes me think. Throughout the week, we have been talking about Dr. Viktor Frankl. Dr. Viktor Frankl, he talks about the concentration camps, and he has this quote. He says, "Forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing, your freedom to choose how you will respond to a situation." And I think this is just so incredibly accurate towards what is happening right now. Let me just, I'm going to be playing just down here some video clips of right now how Auschwitz, the concentration camp in Poland, and it is just insane to see this situation. So Viktor Frankl, to put it into perspective, he was also part of the concentration camp, and while being part of this concentration camp,
yeah, I was just distinguishing that he was a prisoner in the concentration camp. He wasn't one of the guards. Just so we can put it in perspective as you continue the story.
And he was just basically observing how everybody was behaving. So now that we're talking about freedom, now that we're talking about they have taken away my freedom, now that we are living in a complete different way, and we think about what these guys have gone through, there's not even a slight comparison that we can talk about. But once again, we are getting into that situation where we need to understand that forces beyond our control can take away everything. Right now, we could be on uncertainty because of the coronavirus. Right now, we could be on uncertainty because of what's going to happen politically, or if we will be able to travel, or whatever it is. We are completely uncertain about this. But the only thing that they cannot take away from us is the way that we respond to this situation. And I think that it's a very important part for you to understand that if we are going to have a mental health pandemic, you have that choice. You should not be inside. You have that choice of separating yourself, having that helicopter view, having that awareness that you can either be the victim and suffer, or actually get away from this by seeing things in a completely different way.
It's so true. And it doesn't mean that you can't change your stance either. You can be a victim and you can be a victor at the same time. You can choose when to be vulnerable, and you can choose when to make a stand. The most important leaders of all time, if you ever get a chance to read the memoirs or the biographies about the people that changed the world, most of the time they have no idea what they're doing, but they're driven and they're taking steps to just make things happen because they've got a vision and they've got an idea that the goal is worth it. Even if physically they may not make it, the goal and the change to what's going to happen to the world was worth that risk. So it's worthwhile thinking about how you take a stand on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly don't like being in lockdown. I would prefer right now, I should have been in Europe enjoying the fantastic European weather, and I should have been with my parents-in-law. I would have been able to go see my mother. I would have been able to do a lot of things. I mean, my events would not be canceled. Yes, Dave and I, we have been very much affected by this. And instead of actually just dwelling on the whole situation, we are seeing things in a different way because our level of awareness, our level of consciousness is very different. Now, as it says here, and it's also a quote from Viktor Frankl, he says, life is not primarily a quest for pleasure, as Freud believed, or a quest for power, as Alfred Adler taught, but it is a quest for meaning. And I think the biggest difference between Dave, myself, and other people that are not suffering because we're going to be locked down and you're going to give us a vaccine and we cannot use the mask because, of course, they're trying to take away our liberties. We don't think this way because we have a meaning. We're not all in the same boat. We're all enduring the same storm, but everybody has a different boat. And if you don't like the boat that you're in, change it. That is exactly what awareness is all about. So that was it, Dave. Another great episode. And by the way, I mean, if you think all this information is valuable, make sure to go to toiletpaperdiaries.com and listen to the podcast. I mean, the podcast is just as valuable as the show. And the great thing is that you don't have to be watching it. You can just be in the gym, or you could be elsewhere, and you will be able to really enjoy all this great information.
I'm just thinking that we'll have to date these at some point, and we'll say that was created in 2020 BC. And people say, well, what does BC stand for? Before Clubhouse. That's what we're talking about. But anyway, what can you say? I hope you enjoyed this show. More coming your way. Look after yourself. Stay safe. And don't kiss anybody unless you've got a mask on. It's the Toilet Paper Diaries.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.